A billionaire screamed, "Leave me!" as fire swallowed the helicopter. The single father should have run. Instead, he threw himself into the inferno. What he didn't know? She was the daughter of the man who destroyed his life. What she didn't know? He was the ghost her father's lies had buried. Two strangers, one explosion, and a decade of secrets about to unravel in the snow. Stay with me until the end of this story and comment your city below so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The mountain didn't care who you were. It didn't matter if you had billions in the bank or holes in your boots. Up here, at 11,000 feet where the air thinned to whispers and the wind had teeth, everything bled the same shade of red against white snow. The storm knew this. The mountain knew this. Caleb Rourke knew this better than most. He stood outside the radar station, coffee mug frozen to his bare hand, watching the sky turn the color of old bruises. The blizzard had been building for 3 days, the kind of storm that erased roads, swallowed towns, and made search and rescue shake their heads before they even got the call. Inside the small prefab building, the equipment hummed and beeped, tracking aircraft across the northern corridor. Mostly cargo planes, sometimes medical helicopters. Nothing was supposed to fly in weather like this. His radio crackled. "Caleb, you seen this?" It was Denise, the night shift operator down in Woodland Ridge. Her voice sounded tight. He stepped back inside, snow melting off his shoulders. "Seen what?" "Private helicopter. Came out of nowhere. Transponders barely registering. They're way off course." Caleb set his mug down and leaned over the console. A single blip stuttered across the screen, faint and erratic, like a dying heartbeat. "What's their altitude?" "Dropping fast, 9,000 feet, now 8,500. His jaw tightened. "Did they call in a mayday?" "Negative. Radio's dead or they're not responding. Caleb, they're in the red zone." The red zone. That's what they called the stretch of peaks and canyons where updrafts turned into sledgehammers and visibility dropped to arm's length. He'd lost count of how many crash sites he'd marked on the map over the years. How many times he'd stood at a funeral and said nothing because there was nothing left to say. "How long until they're down?" he asked. "If they don't pull up, 4 minutes, maybe less." Caleb stared at the screen. The blip flickered, faded, came back. "I'm going out," he said. "Caleb, don't be stupid. You can't even see 10 feet in this." He was already grabbing his coat. The wind hit him like a fist the moment he stepped outside. Snow came sideways, needle sharp, turning the world into a white roar. He pulled his goggles down and started moving, boots crunching through knee-deep drifts. The station sat on a plateau overlooking the valley. If the helicopter went down nearby, there was a chance, a slim, stupid chance, he could reach it before the cold did its work. His radio crackled again. Denise's voice was barely audible over the static. "Caleb, signal's gone. Last position, North Ridge." The North Ridge? That was a 20-minute hike in good weather. In this? He'd be lucky to make it in 40. He pushed forward anyway. The thing about mountains was they had a way of reminding you what you used to be. Caleb had been a rescue pilot once. One of the best, according to the plaques gathering dust in a box under his bed. He'd pulled 73 people out of situations just like this. Avalanches, crashes, climbers who'd run out of luck and oxygen. He'd loved it. The adrenaline. The impossible math of wind and weight and will. The moment when you dragged someone back from the edge and they looked at you like you were something more than human. Then came the flight that ended it all. 10 years ago. A routine medical transport. His wife Sarah had been the lead flight nurse. They were bringing a critical patient down from Summit Pass when the helicopter's stabilization system failed. No warning. Just a violent shudder, and then gravity remembered they existed. Caleb had fought the controls, screaming into the radio, but the machine wouldn't listen. They hit the ground at 70 miles an hour. Sarah died on impact. The patient died 2 minutes later. Caleb walked away with 17 broken bones and a question that never stopped asking itself: why him? The investigation blamed mechanical failure, defective software in the flight control system. The manufacturer, Vale Aerospace, issued a recall, paid out settlements, and buried the story under a mountain of lawyers and NDAs. Caleb's pilot's license was suspended during the inquiry. By the time they cleared him, he couldn't stomach the thought of flying again. The sound of rotors made him nauseous. The smell of aviation fuel gave him nightmares. So he became a radar tech, a watcher instead of a doer. He moved to this forgotten corner of the Rockies with his 8-year-old daughter Mia, and he taught himself to live small. No risks, no heroics, just quiet days and the steady rhythm of Mia's laughter reminding him why he was still here. But tonight, the mountain was asking him to remember. He found the wreckage at the bottom of a ravine. The helicopter had carved a burning scar through the forest, snapping trees like matchsticks before slamming into the rocks. The tail section was gone. The cockpit was crumpled like a soda can. Flames licked at the fuselage despite the snow, fed by leaking fuel. Smoke poured into the sky, black and chemical. Caleb slid down the embankment, loose stones and ice tearing at his gloves. The heat hit him 30 feet out, a wall of it that made his skin prickle and his eyes water. He could see movement inside the cockpit. Someone was alive. "Hey!" he shouted. "Can you hear me?" The movement stopped. Then a voice, thin, shaking, female. "Help! Please!" He reached the wreckage and peered through the shattered windscreen. A woman was trapped in the pilot's seat, harness tangled, blood running down her face. Her eyes found his and locked on. They were gray. Storm gray. "I'm going to get you out," Caleb said. "The fuel line," she gasped. It's cracked. The whole thing's going to... An explosion cut her off. Not the big one. Just a warning shot, a fuel pocket igniting somewhere in the engine. The helicopter shuddered. Flames roared higher. Caleb grabbed the door and pulled. It didn't budge. The frame was bent, jammed against the rocks. He braced his boot against the fuselage and pulled again. Metal screamed. His shoulders burned. "Stop," the woman said. Her voice was weaker now. "You have to go. Leave me." "Not happening. I'm dead either way. Don't die for..." "Shut up and help me." Something in his tone must have reached her because she stopped arguing. She fumbled with her harness, fingers clumsy with shock and cold. Caleb wedged a rock under the door and pried it another inch, then another. "When I say go, you push yourself toward me," he said. "Understand?" She nodded. "Go!" She pushed. He pulled. The door shrieked open and she tumbled forward into his arms. He caught her, spun, and started running. The helicopter exploded behind them. The shockwave hit like a truck, lifting them off their feet and throwing them into the snow. Caleb twisted midair, wrapping himself around the woman, and they hit the ground hard. Heat washed over them. Debris rained down, chunks of metal, burning plastic, shattered glass. Something heavy slammed into the ground 6 inches from Caleb's head. Then silence. Well, not silence. The wind still howled, the fire still crackled. But the violence was over. Caleb lay there for a moment, breath coming in ragged gasps, his body screaming in a dozen places. The woman was beneath him, not moving. "Hey," he said. "You alive?" A pause. Then, "Unfortunately." He laughed. It hurt. He rolled off her and sat up, checking himself for damage. Burns on his forearms, cuts on his face, ribs that might be cracked, but nothing fatal. The woman sat up slower. Her left arm hung at a wrong angle, broken. Her flight suit was torn and scorched. She looked at the burning wreckage, then at Caleb, then back at the wreckage. "You're insane," she said. "Yeah, I get that a lot. I told you to leave me. I don't follow orders well." She stared at him for a long moment, like she was trying to figure out if he was real. Then she started laughing. It was a broken, half-hysterical sound, but it was laughter. "What's funny?" Caleb asked. "I'm alive. That's funny." She looked at him again. "Who are you?" "Caleb Rourke. I work at the radar station up on the plateau." "You're not with Search and Rescue?" "Not anymore." "Then why did you come down here?" "Good question." Caleb looked at the fire, at the twisted metal that used to be a helicopter, at the snow that was already trying to bury it all. "Because someone had to," he said finally. The woman nodded slowly. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but her eyes rolled back and she collapsed. Caleb caught her before she hit the ground. But the cabin was 3 miles through the storm. Caleb had built it himself years ago on a plot of land nobody wanted because it was too remote and too steep. Just a single room with a wood stove, a sleeping loft, and a radio that barely worked. He used it when the weather got bad and the station became inaccessible. Mia called it the Grumpy Cave. He kicked the door open and carried the woman inside. She was unconscious but breathing. He laid her on the cot, checked her pulse, steady but weak, and started cutting away her flight suit. The broken arm was obvious, compound fracture, bone pressing against skin. There was a gash across her ribs that needed stitches, burns on her hands, possible concussion. He worked quickly, hands moving on autopilot. Splint the arm, clean and dress the wounds, wrap her in blankets, get the stove going, keep her warm. It wasn't until he was boiling water for tea that he noticed the patch on her flight suit. Vale Aerospace, as his hands went still. He picked up the torn fabric and stared at the logo, a stylized wing inside a circle. The same logo that had been on the settlement check. The same logo that had appeared in his nightmares for 10 years. No. It was a coincidence. Lots of pilots worked for Vale. It didn't mean anything. Except... He walked back to the cot and looked at the woman's face. Really looked. She was younger than he'd thought. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair matted with blood and snow. Strong features. There was something familiar about her. Something that tugged at the edges of his memory. He went to his pack and pulled out his phone. No signal, but he downloaded news articles obsessively over the years. Anything related to Vale Aerospace. He scrolled through photos until he found what he was looking for. His stomach dropped. The woman on the cot was Ariana Vale, daughter of Marcus Vale, founder and CEO of Vale Aerospace, the man whose defective helicopters had killed Sarah. Caleb sat down hard, phone slipping from his fingers. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Bullshit. She woke up 3 hours later. Caleb was sitting by the stove, staring into the fire, when he heard her move. He didn't turn around. "Where am I?" Her voice was rough. "My cabin, about 5 miles from the crash site." "How long have I been out?" 3 hours, maybe 4. She tried to sit up and gasped. "My arm. Broken. I splinted it. You need a hospital, but the storm's too bad for an evac." "How bad?" "We're stuck here for at least another day, maybe 2. Silence. Then, "You saved my life." "Yeah." "Thank you." He didn't answer. She must have picked up on something in his silence because her voice changed. "What's wrong?" Caleb finally turned to face her. "You're Ariana Vale." She blinked. "You know who I am?" "I know your name. I know your company." He stood up. "I know your father." Her expression shifted, guarded now. "How?" 10 years ago, one of your helicopters fell out of the sky. Defective stabilization system. 2 people died. One of them was my wife." The color drained from her face. "The investigation blamed Vale Aerospace," Caleb continued. His voice was flat, empty. "Your father paid out settlements, buried the story, and I spent a decade wondering if the same thing would happen again." He gestured at the door. "Looks like I got my answer." Ariana opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't know. About the crash or about the cover-up. Both, neither. She stopped, took a breath. "I was in college when that happened. I wasn't involved in the company yet." "But you are now." "Yes." "CEO, right? Took over after your father retired." 2 years ago." Caleb laughed bitterly. "Must be nice, inheriting an empire built on cutting corners and buying silence." "That's not fair." "Fair?" He took a step toward her. "You want to talk about fair? My daughter was 8 years old when her mother died. She had nightmares for 3 years. I had to explain to her why Mommy wasn't coming home, why the helicopter fell, why bad things happen to good people. And you know what the hardest part was? I didn't have answers, because your father made sure nobody would ever have answers." Ariana's eyes were wet. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sorry doesn't bring her back. "I know." They stared at each other across the small cabin. The fire crackled. The wind howled. Outside, the storm buried the world. Finally, Caleb turned away. "Get some rest. We'll figure out what to do in the morning." "Caleb, I said get some rest. She didn't argue. He didn't sleep. Instead, he sat by the radio trying to raise someone, anyone, on the emergency channels. Static answered. The storm was jamming everything. Behind him, Ariana shifted on the cot. He could feel her watching him. Why did you do it? She asked quietly. Do what? Save me. If you hate my family so much, why didn't you just walk away? Caleb's hand stilled on the radio dials. Because I'm not my father, Ariana continued. And you're not yours. Whatever Marcus Vale did, whatever choices he made, they're not mine. Just like whatever happened to your wife isn't your daughter's burden to carry. He turned to face her. What do you know about my daughter? Nothing. But I know what it's like to inherit other people's sins. To wake up every day and wonder if you're going to repeat their mistakes. She met his eyes. I took over Vale Aerospace because I wanted to fix it. To do better. But if the company is still cutting corners, if there are still defects causing crashes, then I need to know. Why should I believe you? Because I was flying that helicopter myself, she said. No pilot, no co-pilot, just me, doing an inspection flight on a new prototype. And when the system failed, I knew. I knew it was the same problem, the same flaw that should have been fixed a decade ago. Caleb felt something shift in his chest. You're telling me your company is still using the defective system? I'm telling you I don't know, but I'm going to find out. She tried to sit up again and winced. If you help me, help you. The black box. It's still in the wreckage. If we can recover it, if we can prove the system failed the same way, then you can reopen the investigation, Caleb finished, and clear your wife's name. Show that the pilot wasn't at fault. He stared at her. I was the pilot. Then clear your name. The words hung in the air between them. Caleb thought about Sarah, about the guilt he'd carried for 10 years, the weight of wondering if he could have done something differently, if he'd missed a warning sign, if he'd been too slow, too reckless, too human. He thought about Mia, who'd grown up with a father who flinched at the sound of helicopters. He thought about all the other families who might be next. The storm's supposed to break tomorrow afternoon, he said finally. We go get the black box then. Ariana nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If that box proves what I think it proves, your whole company goes down. Then it deserves to. Caleb held her gaze for a long moment. Then he turned back to the radio. Outside, the mountain held its breath, waiting for dawn. Morning came gray and cold. The storm had eased to a steady snowfall, the wind dropping from a scream to a whisper. Caleb checked Ariana's injuries. The arm was swelling. She was definitely concussed, but she was stable, and then geared up for the hike back to the crash site. I'm coming with you, Ariana said. No, you're not. It's my helicopter, my company, my responsibility. You can barely stand. Then I'll crawl. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the same stubborn fire he'd seen in the cockpit when she'd been trapped and bleeding and refusing to give up. You're insane, he said. Yeah, I get that a lot. Despite everything, Caleb smiled. They made slow progress through the snow. Ariana kept pace, gritting her teeth against the pain, refusing to accept help. Caleb watched her struggle and felt something complicated twist in his gut. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. She was like him. Someone who couldn't walk away from a mess, even when walking away was the smart thing to do. The crash site looked different in daylight. The fire had burned itself out, leaving a blackened skeleton. The wreckage was partially buried in snow. It looked like a grave. Caleb approached the remains of the cockpit. The black box should be in the tail section, if there's anything left of it. They searched for 20 minutes, digging through snow and twisted metal. Caleb's hands were numb, his fingers clumsy. He was about to give up when Ariana called out, "Found it!" She was crouched by a section of fuselage, holding a small orange box, scorched but intact. Caleb took it from her carefully. This is it. This is everything. Then we need to get it somewhere safe, somewhere... She stopped. Caleb followed her gaze. 3 figures were approaching through the trees. They were moving fast, purposefully. Not search and rescue. Wrong gear. Wrong formation. Company men, Ariana breathed. How do you know? Because I called them yesterday, before the crash. I told them I was going to inspect the prototype. that I had concerns about the system. She looked at Caleb. If they're here now, it's not to rescue me. It's to clean up. Caleb's blood went cold. We need to move. Now. They ran. They didn't make it far. The snow was too deep, Ariana's injuries too severe, and the men behind them too determined. Caleb could hear them calling out, voices sharp and professional. Not threats. Not yet. Just the kind of calm, reasonable tones that made his skin crawl. Ms. Vale, we're here to help. Please stop moving. Ariana stumbled, caught herself against a tree. Her face was gray with pain, breath coming in short gasps. The broken arm hung uselessly at her side. Keep going, Caleb urged, gripping her good arm. I can't. You can. Caleb, they're going to catch us anyway. And if they see you running, if they think you're involved, I am involved. She looked at him, snow catching in her eyelashes. You have a daughter. The words hit him like a punch. Mia. Christ, he hadn't even called her. She'd be at school now, probably wondering why he hadn't checked in. His sister Emma was watching her this week, but Emma would worry if he disappeared for too long without word. Give me the black box, Ariana said. What? Give it to me. Let me handle this. These are my people, my company. I'll deal with them. They're not here to have a conversation. Maybe not, but they won't hurt me. I'm still the CEO. Her eyes were steady despite the pain. You get out of here. Get that box somewhere safe. And when I get back to civilization, I'll make sure the truth comes out. You expect me to trust you? No, I expect you to trust yourself. You didn't pull me out of that fire to watch me die in a cover-up. And I didn't survive that crash to let my father's mistakes keep killing people. The voices were getting closer. Caleb made a decision he knew he'd probably regret. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped the black box inside it, then handed it to Ariana. Hold this. When they get here, you tell them you were alone. Tell them I was never at the cabin. Tell them whatever you need to tell them. What are you... But he was already moving, circling around through the trees, positioning himself behind the approaching men. It was a stupid plan. Reckless. Exactly the kind of thing he'd sworn off 10 years ago. But Sarah's voice was in his head, the last thing she'd said to him before that final flight. Don't be careful, Caleb. Be brave. The three men emerged into the clearing where Ariana stood. They were dressed in expensive tactical gear, the kind of equipment that cost more than Caleb made in a year. Private security, the kind corporations hired when they needed something done quietly. The lead man held up his hands in a placating gesture. Ms. Vale. Thank God you're alive. We've been searching for you all night. Have you? Ariana's voice was flat. The storm knocked out communications. We couldn't get a fix on your position until an hour ago. He gestured to her arm. You're injured. We need to get you medical attention immediately. I'm fine. Ma'am, with all due respect, you're clearly not fine. You've been in a helicopter crash. You're hypothermic. You need... What I need, Ariana cut him off, is for you to explain why you're here instead of search and rescue. The man's smile didn't waver. We work faster. Mr. Vale wanted to ensure my father sent you. He's concerned about you and about the prototype. His eyes flicked to the wreckage. We need to secure the site. Make sure the technology doesn't fall into the wrong hands. The technology is already in the wrong hands, Ariana said. It's been killing people. The man's expression shifted. Still pleasant, still professional, but something cold moved behind his eyes. That's a serious allegation, Ms. Vale. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more comfortable. Once you've received medical care and had time to process the trauma of, I'm processing just fine, and I'm not going anywhere until someone explains why the stabilization system failed exactly the same way it failed 10 years ago. Silence. The three men exchanged glances. I don't know what you're talking about, the lead man said carefully. Yes, you do. The crash in Montana. 2 fatalities. Vale Aerospace paid settlements and buried the investigation. Ariana took a step forward. Did my father know? Did he know the system was still flawed and approved production anyway? Ms. Vale, you're confused. The trauma. Answer the question. The man's jaw tightened. I think we should continue this conversation in private. I think you should start telling the truth. Ma'am, I'm going to have to insist.
That's when Caleb stepped out of the trees. All three men spun, hands moving toward weapons concealed under their jackets. Caleb kept his own hands visible, empty, non-threatening. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "seems like there's been a misunderstanding."
The lead man's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" "Caleb Rourke. I work at the radar station. Saw the crash on my screens, came down to help." "Did Ms. Vale tell you anything about the helicopter? About the technology?" "She told me she was cold and bleeding. That's about it." The man studied him. "You should leave. This is a private matter." "Seems like a public matter if helicopters are falling out of the sky." "Sir, I won't ask again. Leave now or we'll have to detain you for interfering with a corporate investigation." Caleb laughed. "A corporate investigation? That's a new one." The man's hand moved inside his jacket. "Touch that weapon," Caleb said quietly, "and we're going to have a problem." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind rustled through the trees, snow drifted down. Somewhere in the distance, a branch snapped under the weight of ice. Then Ariana spoke. "Let him go." The lead man turned to her. "Ms.
Vale, he saved my life, and now he's leaving. Aren't you, Caleb?" Caleb looked at her. She gave him the smallest nod. "Trust me." He didn't. Not really. But he was out of options. "Yeah," he said. "I'm leaving." He turned and walked into the forest. He could feel their eyes on his back. Every step he expected to hear gunfire, but it never came. When he was far enough away, he started running. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs screamed and he couldn't hear voices anymore. Then he ran some more. He didn't stop until he reached the cabin. Inside, he grabbed his pack, his radio, and the spare keys to his truck. He was halfway to the door when he realized the jacket, the one he'd wrapped the black box in, was still with Ariana. Damn it! He'd trusted her, given her the only evidence that mattered. If she handed it over to those men, if she decided protecting the company was more important than the truth, then everything Sarah had died for would stay buried. But something in her eyes had been real. The pain, the anger, the determination. He had to believe that. He locked up the cabin and started the long hike back to the station. The first thing he did when he got back was call Mia. His sister Emma answered. "Caleb, thank God. We've been trying to reach you all morning. Sorry, the storm knocked out communications. Is Mia okay?" "She's fine. Worried about you, but fine." "Where have you been?" He closed his eyes. "Long story. Can I talk to her?" "Hang on." A moment later, Mia's voice came through. "Dad?" "Hey, sweetheart." "Are you okay? Emma said there was a helicopter crash." "I'm fine. Everyone's fine." "Did you help them, like you used to?" Caleb's throat tightened. He'd never told Mia much about his rescue pilot days. She knew he used to fly, knew her mother had died in a crash, but she didn't know the details. Didn't know about the nightmares, the guilt, the decade of running from anything that looked like heroism. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I helped them." Mom would be proud. The words hit him square in the chest. "I love you, Mia." "Love you too, Dad. Come home safe." "I will." He hung up and sat in the silence of the station, listening to the equipment hum and beep and track aircraft that had no idea how close they were to disaster. Then his radio crackled. "Caleb, you there?" It was Denise again. "Yeah, what's up?" "You need to see the news." He pulled up a browser on his computer. The headlines loaded slowly, the satellite internet struggling through the storm's aftermath. Then he saw it. Vale Aerospace CEO rescued after helicopter crash. Below the headline was a photo of Ariana being loaded into a medical helicopter, her arm in a sling, her face composed despite the trauma. The article was brief. Mechanical failure, bad weather, fortunate rescue. No mention of the black box. No mention of defects or investigations or cover-ups. No mention of Caleb. He refreshed the page. The story had already been updated with a statement from Marcus Vale himself, expressing gratitude for his daughter's survival and promising a thorough review of the incident. A thorough review. Corporate speak for burying it deep. Caleb slammed his fist on the desk. He'd been an idiot, trusted someone whose entire fortune was built on lies. Of course she'd protected the company.
Of course, she'd handed over the black box and played the victim and let her father spin the story into something safe and digestible. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then something made him pick up. Rourke? Mr. Rourke, this is Marcus Vale. The voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of voice that had spent decades convincing people to do things they knew they shouldn't. Caleb's hand tightened on the phone. What do you want? I understand you helped rescue my daughter. I wanted to express my personal gratitude. Save it. I also understand you may have concerns about the incident. You mean the crash? The accident, yes. I want to assure you that Vale Aerospace takes these matters extremely seriously. We're conducting a full investigation. Like you did 10 years ago? Silence. Then, softer, more careful. I'm aware of your history with our company, Mr. Rourke. I'm aware of the tragedy you experienced, and I'm truly sorry for your loss. Are you sorry it happened, or sorry I know about it? I'm sorry that you're carrying unnecessary guilt. The investigation into that crash was conclusive. Pilot error. It wasn't pilot error. It was a defective stabilization system. Same system that just failed on your new prototype. That's a very serious accusation, one that could have legal implications if repeated publicly. There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. Is that why you called? Caleb asked. To warn me to keep my mouth shut. I called to offer you compensation for your trouble, for your time, for your discretion. Marcus paused. $250,000, deposited in any account you specify. All I ask is that you refrain from discussing the incident with the media or any regulatory agencies. You're trying to buy my silence. I'm trying to spare us both unnecessary hardship. My daughter is traumatized. You're a single father trying to provide for your child. There's no reason this needs to become complicated. Caleb laughed, low and bitter. You really think I'm going to take your money? I think you're going to consider what's best for your daughter. $250,000 could change her life. College fund, better house, security. Security. Caleb's voice dropped. You threaten Mia, and I swear to God. Threaten? Mr. Rourke, you misunderstand. I'm simply pointing out that you have a responsibility to your child, just as I have a responsibility to protect my company and the thousands of families it supports. Marcus's tone hardened. Walk away. Take the money. Move on with your life. Because if you try to fight this, if you try to drag Vale Aerospace through another investigation, you'll lose, and your daughter will suffer for your stubbornness. The line went dead. Caleb stood there, phone pressed to his ear, hands shaking with rage. Then he pulled up his browser and started searching. If Marcus Vale thought he could be bought or intimidated into silence, he was about to learn otherwise. 3 hours later, Caleb had a name, Jonathan Reeves. Reeves was a journalist with the Denver Post who'd written extensively about corporate malfeasance in the aerospace industry. He'd been one of the few reporters who'd pushed back on Vale Aerospace's narrative 10 years ago, who'd questioned the settlement terms and the speed of the investigation. He'd also been sued into near bankruptcy by the company and forced to issue a retraction. Caleb found an email address on an old blog Reeves maintained. He typed out a message, deleted it, typed it again. How do you tell someone that the fight they lost a decade ago wasn't actually over? Finally, he just wrote the truth. My name is Caleb Rourke. 10 years ago, your reporting on Vale Aerospace was right. I was the pilot in that crash. My wife was the nurse. And it's happening again. I have information. Call me. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he sat back and waited. The reply came at midnight. Same diner as last time. Tomorrow, noon. Come alone. And Rourke? Bring proof. Caleb stared at the screen. He didn't have proof. The black box was gone. Ariana had either handed it over to her father or it was locked in some corporate vault where it would never see daylight. He was about to give up when he remembered something. The crash site. He'd been so focused on the black box he hadn't thought about the wreckage itself. The circuit boards, the flight computer, the physical evidence still buried in snow and ash. If he could recover even a piece of the system, if he could show Reeves the same defect that killed Sarah. It was a long shot. The company men had probably cleaned up the site by now, but maybe they'd missed something. Maybe they'd been in such a hurry to secure the black box, They'd overlooked the smaller components. Caleb checked the weather forecast. Clear skies for the next 48 hours. He grabbed his pack and headed for the door. The hike back to the crash site took 4 hours. The sun was high and bright, the snow sparkling like crushed diamonds. Beautiful. Deceptive. The kind of day that made you forget people died out here. When he reached the ravine, his stomach sank. The site had been stripped clean. The wreckage was gone. Every piece. All that remained was scorched earth and a few scattered bolts. Even the trees that had been damaged in the crash had been cut down and hauled away. Professional. Thorough. Terrifying. Caleb stood at the edge of the clearing, feeling the weight of defeat settle over him. They'd erased everything. Sarah's justice. Ariana's crash. All of it swallowed up by money and lawyers and men who smiled while they threatened your family. He was about to turn back when something caught his eye. A glint of metal, half buried in the snow near the tree line. He walked over and dug it out. It was small, barely larger than a deck of cards. A circuit board, charred at the edges but mostly intact, and stamped on the corner was a serial number. Caleb's hand started shaking. This was it. This was proof. He wrapped the board carefully in his jacket and stood up. That's when he heard the voice behind him. "I was hoping you'd come back." He spun around. Ariana Vale stood at the edge of the clearing, bundled in a borrowed coat, her broken arm in a proper cast now. She looked exhausted but alert. And she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 3 people Caleb didn't recognize. Not the security team from before. These were different. Younger, carrying equipment that looked more scientific than tactical. "What the hell are you doing here?" Caleb demanded. "Same thing you are. Looking for evidence." "I thought you handed over the black box." "I did. To the FAA, not my father." Ariana took a step forward. "The news story was a cover. We needed to buy time, make Marcus think I was cooperating while we built a real case." "We?" She gestured to the 3 people behind her. "This is my team. Engineers I trust. People who've been pushing for safety reviews and getting shut down by the board." She looked at Caleb. "The black box is being analyzed by federal investigators right now, but we need more. We need physical evidence from the wreckage to prove the defect is systematic, not just bad luck on 2 isolated crashes." Caleb stared at her. "You lied to your father." "I lied to protect the investigation. If he'd known what I was planning, he would have killed it before it started. He called me, offered me money to stay quiet." "I know, I'm sorry. He's desperate. The company's been covering up safety issues for years, and if this goes public, Vale Aerospace won't survive." She met his eyes. "I'm not going to let him bury this again." "Why should I believe you?" "Because I was in that helicopter when it fell. Because I felt the system fail. Because I know my father prioritized profits over lives, and I have to live with that." Her voice cracked. "Because your wife deserved better. And so do the pilots who'll fly these machines tomorrow if we don't stop this today." Caleb wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the betrayal, the suspicion, the decade of bitterness. But the truth was, he was tired of fighting alone, tired of carrying Sarah's ghost through every conversation. He pulled out the circuit board. "Found this at the edge of the site. Your people missed it in the cleanup." One of the engineers stepped forward, eyes widening. "That's the primary stabilization module. If we can prove it's got the same flaw as the one from 10 years ago." "We can prove systematic negligence," Ariana finished. She looked at Caleb. "Will you testify? If this goes to trial, we'll need someone who was there, someone who can speak to the original crash and the pattern." "Your father will destroy me." "My father is going to jail." "You'd really send him to prison?" "I'd really stop him from killing more people." Her jaw set. "He's my father. I love him. But I won't protect him from this." Caleb thought about Mia, about the $250,000 Marcus had offered, about security and college funds and all the ways money could make life easier. Then he thought about Sarah bleeding out in the snow while he screamed for help that came too late. "I'll testify," he said. Ariana's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Your father's got resources, lawyers, political connections. This is going to get ugly." "I know." People are going to hate you, your family, your friends, everyone who depends on the company for their livelihood. They're going to see you as a traitor. I know. And you're okay with that? She looked at the scorched earth, at the place where she'd nearly died, where Caleb had dragged her from the fire and refused to let her give up. I'm okay with being able to look at myself in the mirror, she said quietly. That's all that matters. One of the engineers called out, We found something else, looks like a fragment of the flight computer. They spent the next 2 hours combing the site, recovering pieces the cleanup crew had missed. Each component told part of the story. Each circuit and wire and connector was another nail in Marcus Vale's coffin. By the time they finished, the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of orange and gold. Caleb and Ariana stood at the edge of the ravine, looking down at the place where everything had changed. Do you think it'll be enough? Caleb asked. It has to be. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. She turned to face him. My father spent 30 years building Vale Aerospace into an empire. He's not going to let it fall without a fight, but for the first time we have a real chance to beat him. Not just because of the evidence, but because people like you are willing to stand up and say enough. People like me are idiots who don't know when to quit. People like you are heroes who save lives, even when it costs them everything. Caleb shook his head. I'm not a hero. I'm just tired of good people dying because rich men make bad decisions. Then help me make sure it stops. They hiked back through the darkening forest, the recovered components packed carefully in sealed cases. When they reached the vehicles, a rented SUV for Ariana's team, Caleb's beat-up truck, Ariana pulled him aside. There's something you need to know, she said. Once we file the complaint with the FAA, once this becomes public, you're going to be a target. My father will come after you. Lawyers, private investigators, maybe worse. Let him try. I'm serious, Caleb. He threatened your daughter. I know. And you're still willing to do this? Caleb thought about Mia's voice on the phone. Mom would be proud. Sarah died because someone decided profit mattered more than safety, he said. I'm not letting that stand. Not for me, not for Mia, not for anyone. Ariana nodded slowly. Then we do this together, and we don't stop until the truth wins. They shook hands in the fading light, two people bound together by tragedy and fire and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, justice was still possible. Caleb drove through the night, the circuit board wrapped carefully on the seat beside him. His phone rang twice. Marcus Vale's number. He didn't answer. The third time, it was Ariana. Turn on the news. He pulled over, found a news site on his phone. The headline made his blood run cold. Federal investigators open probe into Vale Aerospace safety practices. Below it, a photo of Ariana giving a press conference. Her face was composed, determined. The caption read, CEO blows whistle on own company, alleges decade-long cover-up. Caleb's phone rang again. Ariana. What did you do? He asked. I told the truth, all of it, the crashes, the defects, my father's payoffs. Her voice was steady. It's done, Caleb. We can't go back now. They'll crucify you. Probably, but at least they'll be paying attention. In the background, Caleb could hear shouting, reporters, cameras, the chaos of a story breaking wide open. Are you safe? He asked. For now, I've got security. The FAA's putting me in protective custody until the investigation wraps. She paused. What about you? I'm fine. Caleb, I said I'm fine. My father knows you helped me. He knows you have evidence. Promise me you'll be careful. I'll be careful. I mean it. Don't take any risks. Don't meet with anyone alone, and for God's sake, call the police if anything suspicious happens. You sound worried. I am worried. These people play for keeps. Caleb looked at the circuit board on the seat. So do I. He hung up and started driving again. The meeting with Jonathan Reeves happened in a diner outside Boulder, just like the journalist had instructed. Reeves was older than his photo suggested, gray-haired and weathered, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and still kept looking. He sat in a corner booth, nursing coffee that had probably gone cold an hour ago. Caleb slid into the seat across from him. You're Rourke, Reeves said. Not a question. Yeah, you look like shit. Thanks. Reeves smiled grimly.
I saw the news this morning. Ariana Vale's press conference. Hell of a thing, watching a CEO throw her own company under the bus. She's trying to do the right thing. The right thing tends to ruin lives, yours included if you're not careful. Reeves leaned forward. So, you said you have proof. Let's see it. Caleb placed the circuit board on the table. Reeves stared at it for a long moment. Then he pulled out a phone and started taking photos from multiple angles. Where'd you get this? Crash site. The one from 2 days ago? Yeah. Ariana's crash, Chus. Yeah. They cleaned that site. I've got contacts who said Vale's security team stripped it bare within hours. They missed a piece. Reeves set down his phone. This board, if it shows the same defect as the one from 10 years ago, Vale Aerospace is finished. Marcus goes to jail. The company folds. Thousands of people lose their jobs. And how many people stay alive? Fair point. Reeves picked up the board, turning it over in his hands. I need to get this analyzed. I've got an engineer friend who specializes in avionics, former FAA inspector. If anyone can prove systematic negligence, it's her. How long? 48 hours. Maybe less if I push. Reeves looked at Caleb. You ready for what comes next? Because once I publish this, once the story breaks wide open, you're going to be the face of it, the grieving widower, the hero who saved the CEO's life, then brought down her empire. I didn't save her to bring down anything. I saved her because it was the right thing to do. And exposing Vale Aerospace? That's just finishing what Sarah started when she died. She didn't get justice the first time. She's getting it now. Reeves nodded slowly. I'll make sure the story does her justice, too. They talked for another hour, Reeves taking notes, asking questions, building the narrative. When they finished, Caleb felt hollowed out, emptied of everything but grim determination. One more thing, Reeves said as Caleb stood to leave. Watch your back. Marcus Vale didn't build his empire by playing nice. If he can't buy you, he'll try to destroy you, dig up dirt, threaten your family, make you wish you'd taken the money. Let him try. I'm serious, Rourke. These people don't lose gracefully. Neither do I. Caleb walked out into the parking lot. The sky was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across black velvet. Somewhere up there, Sarah was watching. He hoped she was proud. His phone buzzed. Text from Emma. Mia's asking about you. When are you coming home? He typed back, soon, I promise. But even as he sent it, he knew soon might be a long time coming. The call came at 3 a.m. Caleb jerked awake, heart hammering, hand fumbling for his phone. Unknown number. Again. He'd been getting them for the past 2 days, ever since word spread about his involvement in the Vale investigation. Most went to voicemail. Reporters, lawyers, people offering money, threats, or both. He almost didn't answer this one. Then something made him swipe. Rourke. Mr. Rourke. This is Deputy Director Sarah Chen with the FAA. The voice was crisp, official, wide awake despite the hour. I apologize for calling so late, but we have a situation. Caleb sat up, suddenly alert. What kind of situation? Another Vale prototype went down 40 minutes ago. Same mountain range, same weather conditions. We've got a pilot trapped in the wreckage, and the storm's moving back in fast. His blood went cold. How bad? Bad. The helicopter's wedged in a canyon, fuel leaking, structural integrity compromised. Search and rescue can't get close enough for extraction. The winds are too strong. Visibility's near zero. She paused. Mr. Rourke, I've read your file. I know you were one of the best rescue pilots in the region before you retired. We need someone who knows those mountains, who can fly in conditions like this. We need you. I haven't flown in 10 years. I know. My license isn't even current. We can waive that. Emergency authorization. You'd be covered under federal rescue protocols. Caleb stood up, pacing in the dark. His hands were shaking. Why me? There have to be other pilots. There are. None of them will fly. They've all seen the news about Vale Aerospace, about the defects, about the crashes. Nobody's willing to risk their life in a helicopter that might fall out of the sky. Her voice softened. You're the only one who understands what's at stake, and you're the only one crazy enough to do it anyway. You don't know me. Why, I know you pulled Ariana Vale out of a burning wreck when any sane person would have run. I know you're testifying against one of the most powerful companies in the country, even though it's going to cost you everything. And I know if that pilot dies because nobody was brave enough to try, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have saved them. Caleb closed his eyes. She was right. God help him, she was right. What's the pilot's name? David Morrison, 26 years old, former Air Force. This was his first civilian contract with Vale. Chen's voice tightened. He's got a wife and a 3-month-old daughter. Of course he did. I'll do it, Caleb said, but I need guarantees. If something goes wrong, if the helicopter fails, my daughter gets taken care of. Full benefits, college fund, everything. Done. And I want Ariana Vale in the co-pilot seat. Silence. Mr. Rourke, that's not... She's the CEO.
This is her helicopter, her company, her responsibility. If I'm risking my life flying into a storm to clean up Vale's mess, she's coming with me. She's in protective custody. We can't just... Then get her out, because I'm not doing this alone. His voice hardened. You want me to fly? Those are my terms. Chen was quiet for a long moment. I'll make the call. You've got 30 minutes. After that, I'm going back to bed. He hung up and stood in the dark, listening to his heart hammer against his ribs. What the hell was he doing? He walked to Mia's room. She was asleep, sprawled across her bed with stuffed animals scattered around her like an explosion in a toy factory. 10 years old now, smart, fierce. So much like Sarah, it hurt sometimes. He sat on the edge of her bed and brushed hair from her face. Hey, sweetheart, he whispered. Dad's got to go do something important, something scary. She stirred but didn't wake. I know I promised I was done with all this. Done being the guy who flies into storms and pulls people out of impossible situations. But there's someone out there who needs help, and I'm the only one who can give it. He took a shaky breath. Your mom would know what to do. She always did. But I'm just trying to do the right thing, even when the right thing feels like the stupidest thing in the world. Mia's eyes opened. She looked at him sleepily. Dad? Hey, sorry, didn't mean to wake you. You're going to fly again. It wasn't a question. How did you... I heard you on the phone. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. Someone's in trouble. Yeah. And you're the only one who can help. Yeah. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she hugged him, fierce and tight. Do the right thing, Dad. The words hit him like a freight train. What did you say? Do the right thing. That's what Mom always said, right? When things were hard and scary and you didn't know what to do, you do the right thing. She pulled back. So go do the right thing and come home safe. Caleb's eyes burned. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just finally noticed. She smiled, Sarah's smile, and Caleb felt something break open inside him. He kissed her forehead. I love you, Mia. More than anything. Love you too. Now go save somebody. He called Emma, told her he needed her to come stay with Mia, didn't tell her why. She'd find out soon enough. Then he grabbed his old flight gear from the back of the closet, dusty and forgotten, and headed for the door. His phone rang. Chen. We've got her, the deputy director said. Ariana Vale's being transported to the airfield now. She agreed to your terms. Did she have a choice? Not really, but for what it's worth, she didn't hesitate. Chen paused. The helicopter's fueled and ready. Weather window closes in 90 minutes. After that, the storm's going to be too severe for any kind of rescue attempt. Then I better not be late. The drive to the airfield took 40 minutes. Caleb pushed his truck as hard as it would go, hands tight on the wheel, mind racing through procedures he hadn't thought about in a decade. Pre-flight checks, emergency protocols, the way a helicopter handled in high winds, how it fought you, how you had to dance with it instead of forcing it. Could he still do this? Could he climb into a cockpit after 10 years and trust his hands to remember what his mind was trying to forget? He was about to find out. The airfield was a small regional hub, mostly cargo planes and private jets. Floodlights cut through the pre-dawn darkness, illuminating a sleek rescue helicopter sitting on the tarmac. Not a Vale model. This one was a Sikorsky, older but reliable, built before companies started prioritizing profit margins over safety standards. Ariana was waiting beside it, She looked different than she had at the crash site or on the news. Harder, more focused. She'd traded the business suits and press conference composure for a flight suit and climbing harness. Her broken arm was still in a cast, but she'd cut away the sling. The cast itself had been modified, reinforced with some kind of lightweight carbon fiber that let her move almost normally. "You came," she said when Caleb approached. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you were smarter than this." "I'm really not." He looked at the helicopter. "You know how to fly one of these?" "I have a license, not current, but neither is yours." "Can you work a rescue winch with that arm?" "Guess we'll find out." Chen appeared from the operations building, flanked by 2 FAA officials and a weather specialist. "Mr. Rourke, Ms. Vale, thank you for doing this." "Thank us if we don't die," Caleb said. "The pilot's last known position is here." Chen pulled up a map on a tablet, pointing to a red dot deep in the mountain range. "He's in a box canyon, about 300 feet down from the ridge. The helicopter's lodged between 2 rock faces. We've got intermittent radio contact, but he's fading. Hypothermia, blood loss, possibly internal injuries." "How much fuel does he have left?" "Unknown. The tanks were breached in the crash, could be leaking, could be stable. Either way, we're on borrowed time." "What about the flight systems?" Ariana asked. "The ones that failed? Are they the same as the prototype I was flying?" Chen's expression darkened. "Preliminary analysis says yes." "Jesus." Ariana looked at Caleb. He was flying a death trap. "And we're about to fly into a storm to pull him out of it." Caleb turned to Chen. "What's the weather looking like?" The specialist stepped forward. "Severe, clear air turbulence, winds gusting up to 70 knots, freezing precipitation and visibility under a quarter mile. In short, it's going to be hell up there." "Great. Love hell." "Mr. Rourke, I need to be clear about something." Chen's voice was grave. "This is a voluntary mission. You can walk away right now. No judgment, no consequences. But if you go up there, if something goes wrong, we might not be able to get you out. You understand that?" Caleb looked at Ariana. "You ready for this?" "No, but we're doing it anyway." They climbed into the helicopter. The cockpit smelled like oil and plastic and 1,000 memories Caleb had spent 10 years trying to forget. He strapped in, hands moving through pre-flight checks on autopilot. Fuel levels, hydraulics, radio systems. Everything was green. Everything was ready. Except him. His hands were shaking. "Caleb." Ariana's voice was quiet. "You okay?" "No." "Want to talk about it?" "No." "We don't have to do this. We can walk away. Find another pilot. Wait for better weather. Try again tomorrow." "That kid doesn't have until tomorrow." "That kid's not your responsibility." Caleb's hand stilled on the controls. "Yes, he is. The second your father decided to cut corners and put profits over safety, the second he covered up those crashes and paid off anyone who asked questions, he made every pilot who flies these machines my responsibility." He looked at her. "Including you." Ariana held his gaze. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For my father, for the company, for the lives lost because we prioritized the wrong things. You can apologize by helping me save this one." She nodded. "Then let's go save him." Caleb's hands found the controls. Muscle memory kicked in, 10 years falling away in an instant. The helicopter's engine roared to life, rotors spinning faster, faster, until the whole machine vibrated with contained power. "Tower, this is Rescue 7 requesting clearance for emergency departure," he said into his headset. "Rescue 7, you are cleared. Godspeed." The helicopter lifted off. The moment they left the ground, everything changed. The wind hit them like a living thing, hostile and hungry. The helicopter bucked and shuddered. Caleb fought the controls, feeling the machine resist, feeling it try to tear itself out of his hands. "Jesus," Ariana breathed. "It's going to get worse." "How much worse?" "A lot." They climbed through the darkness, the lights of the airfield falling away below. Ahead, the mountains rose like black teeth against a slightly less black sky. The storm was moving in from the north, a wall of clouds and fury that looked like the end of the world. "Radio contact with Morrison," Chen's voice crackled through the headset. "Patching him through now." A new voice, weak and shaking. This is Morrison. Who's up there? This is Caleb Rourke. I'm coming to get you. Rourke? A pause. The guy from the news? The one testifying against Vale? That's me. You're flying a rescue mission for Vale's pilot? I'm flying a rescue mission for a pilot who got screwed by Vale. There's a difference. A sound that might have been a laugh. I saw your wife's name in the articles. Sarah. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just stay alive long enough for me to reach you. I'll try, but Rourke? The helicopter's not stable. Every time the wind shifts, I slide closer to the edge. And there's something wrong with the fuel system. I can smell vapor. If it ignites, it won't. We'll get you out before that happens. You sound pretty confident for a guy who hasn't flown in 10 years. Caleb smiled grimly. Fake it till you make it, right? The storm hit them at 8,000 feet. One second they were flying through rough air. The next they were inside a washing machine made of ice and violence. The helicopter dropped, climbed, spun sideways. Caleb wrestled the controls, every instinct screaming at him to turn back, land, survive. But his hands kept working, kept fighting, kept pushing them forward. Visibility 0, Ariana called out, switching to instruments. Altitude 9,200 feet. We're coming up on the canyon. The radio crackled. Morrison's voice was barely audible through the static. I see lights. Are you close? Close. Hang on. Caleb dropped lower, using the terrain radar to navigate between peaks that he couldn't see but knew were there, waiting to kill them. Every second felt like an hour. Every gust of wind felt like a hand trying to swat them out of the sky. Then, through a break in the snow, he saw it. The wreckage. Morrison's helicopter was wedged at an angle between two cliff faces, nose down, tail pointing up toward the opening of the canyon. The cockpit was crumpled. The rotors were sheared off, and beneath it, barely visible, was a drop of at least 500 feet to the rocks below. Oh my God, Ariana whispered. Yeah. Caleb brought them into a hover, fighting the wind, fighting the downdrafts that wanted to slam them into the canyon walls. Morrison, I see you. How bad is it down there? Bad. I'm pinned. Harness is jammed, and I think my leg's broken. Can you move at all? Not without the whole thing shifting, Caleb swore. Ariana, how's that arm? Functional. Why? Because I need you to go down there. She stared at him. You're joking. I can't leave the controls. The second I let go, we're all dead. You're the only option. Caleb, I've never done a rescue extraction. I don't know how. You're about to learn. There's a harness in the back. Clip in. I'll lower you down. You get Morrison out of that seat and onto the line. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. No, but it's the only way he survives. Ariana looked down at the wreckage, then back at Caleb. Her face was pale but determined. Okay, talk me through it. For the next 5 minutes, while Caleb held them in a hover that felt like trying to balance on a knife edge, Ariana suited up. She moved carefully, methodically, checking each clip and buckle twice. When she was ready, she keyed her radio. I'm at the door. Good. Remember, keep your weight centered. Don't fight the spin. And whatever you do, don't look down. Now you tell me. She opened the door. The wind screamed in, ripping at everything, turning the cabin into chaos. Ariana clipped onto the rescue line and stepped out into nothing. Caleb watched on the external camera as she descended, spinning slowly, disappearing into the snow and darkness. His hands ached from gripping the controls so hard. Every muscle in his body was locked tight, fighting the wind, fighting the helicopter, fighting the universe itself. I'm at the wreckage, Ariana's voice came through the radio. Jesus, this thing's barely holding on. Can you reach Morrison? Working on it. Caleb counted seconds. Each one felt like forever. The helicopter shuddered and bucked. The fuel gauge was dropping faster than it should. They were burning through reserves at an insane rate, fighting the storm. Got him, Ariana said. But the harness is completely jammed. I need something to cut through it. There should be a rescue knife on your belt. Found it. Okay. Morrison, this is going to hurt. A scream cut through the radio. Pain, pure and sharp. Sorry, Ariana was saying. Harness is free. Can you move? I think so. Morrison's voice was tight with agony. My leg. I know, we'll deal with it later. Right now I need you to grab onto me. More sounds of struggle. Caleb's hands were white-knuckled on the controls. The helicopter was starting to drift despite his best efforts. The winds were getting worse. We need to move, he said. Now. Almost there. Okay, Morrison's clipped on. We're ready. Caleb activated the winch. The line started retracting, pulling them up. Slowly. Too slowly. That's when the wreckage shifted. A grinding sound of metal on stone echoed through the canyon. Morrison's helicopter tipped forward, sliding toward the edge. It's going! Ariana screamed. Caleb pushed the winch to maximum speed. The line reeled in faster, jerking and spinning them. Through the camera, he could see Ariana wrapped around Morrison, both of them spiraling up toward the helicopter while the wreckage below broke apart. The fuel tank ignited. Flames erupted from the canyon, a fireball that rose toward them like a living thing. Caleb pulled up hard, climbing, the heat blast hitting them from below. The helicopter lurched. Alarms screamed. Something in the engine compartment made a sound that engines should never make. Come on! Come on! Caleb muttered. Ariana and Morrison cleared the door. Hands reached out, pulled them inside. The door slammed shut. We're in! Ariana shouted. Caleb didn't wait. He banked hard, pushing away from the canyon, away from the flames, away from the death that had been inches behind them. The helicopter fought him every second, sick and struggling, something fundamentally wrong with the way it handled. What's happening? Ariana demanded. Engine 2's failing. Same system as the prototype. Same goddamn defect. Can we make it back? I don't know. He did know. They weren't going to make it. The engine was dying, vibrations getting worse by the second. In another 5 minutes, maybe less, they'd be falling just like every other Vale helicopter that had trusted the wrong system. Chen, he called on the radio. We've got Morrison, but we're in trouble. Engine failure. I'm going to try to make it to the valley floor, but if we go down, you need to have ground teams ready. Copy that. What's your position? Caleb checked the GPS. 8 miles northeast of the crash site. Altitude 7,000 feet and dropping. Rescue 7. There's a clearing at your 10 o'clock, approximately 3 miles out. It's your best shot for an emergency landing. I see it. He didn't see it. He couldn't see anything except white snow and white clouds, and the white lie he was telling himself that they were going to survive this. The helicopter started to spin. Caleb! Ariana's voice was sharp with fear. I know. He fought the controls trying to counter the spin, but the helicopter wasn't responding. The second engine was failing now too, both of them going down together, synchronized in their death spiral. This was it. This was how it ended. Just like Sarah. Just like all the others. No. The thought came clear and cold. No, this is not how it ends. Ariana, get Morrison secured. Brace position. This is going to be rough. Caleb, do it now. She moved, strapping Morrison down, then herself. Caleb could hear her talking to the injured pilot, keeping him calm, keeping him focused. She was good at this. Natural. Like she'd been doing rescues her whole life instead of destroying her family's empire. The ground was coming up fast. Caleb stopped fighting the spin and started working with it, using the rotation to bleed off airspeed, turning a crash into something that might be survivable. It was insane. It violated every rule of aviation. But Sarah had taught him that sometimes the only way to survive was to break all the rules and trust your instincts. Here we go! They hit. The world exploded into noise and violence and the sickening crunch of metal on stone. The helicopter bounced, rolled, skidded sideways through snow and dirt and broken trees. Something tore away with a shriek of tortured metal. Glass shattered. Alarms screamed their final warnings. Then silence. Caleb hung in his harness, upside down, ears ringing. Blood dripped from somewhere on his head. Every breath hurt. But he was breathing. Ariana? His voice came out rough. Here, I'm here. She sounded dazed, but alive. Morrison? A groan. Still kicking, barely. We need to get out. If the fuel tanks rupture, already on it. Ariana was moving, cutting herself free, dropping to what was now the ceiling. She grabbed a rescue axe and started smashing at the door. Caleb released his harness and fell hard. Pain shot through his ribs, probably broken. He ignored it and crawled to help Ariana with the door. Together they kicked it open. Cold air rushed in, clean and sharp and beautiful. They pulled Morrison out first, dragging him through the snow away from the wreckage. Then they collapsed, all three of them, gasping and bleeding and impossibly alive. Above them, the storm started to ease, the snow lightened, the wind died down to a whisper. And in the distance, Caleb could hear the sound of helicopters, real rescue teams, people who knew what they were doing. "We made it," Ariana said wonderingly. "Yeah." Caleb started to laugh. It hurt like hell, but he couldn't stop. "We actually made it." Morrison reached out with a shaking hand. "Thank you, both of you. I don't know how to—" "Don't," Caleb said. "Just get better. Go home to your wife and daughter. Live a long, boring life." "I will. I promise." They sat in the snow until the rescue teams arrived, until medics swarmed over them with questions and equipment and concerned voices. Caleb let them work, too exhausted to protest, too relieved to care. As they loaded Morrison onto a stretcher, the young pilot looked back at Caleb. "Your wife, Sarah, she'd be proud of you." Caleb's throat tightened. "Yeah, I hope so." They airlifted Morrison out first, then came back for Ariana and Caleb. As the rescue helicopter climbed back toward civilization, Caleb looked down at the wreckage they'd left behind. Another Vale helicopter destroyed. Another system failure. Another piece of evidence. "It's not going to stop," Ariana said quietly. "Not until we tear the whole thing down and start over." "Can you do that? Destroy your father's company?" "I already have. I testified to the FAA this morning before we left. Gave them everything. Financial records, internal memos, proof that my father knew about the defects and authorized production anyway." She looked at him. "Vale Aerospace is done. The board voted to ground the entire fleet an hour ago." Caleb stared at her. "You didn't tell me. I didn't want it to influence your decision to fly. I needed you to do this because it was right, not because you knew the company was already falling apart." "What happens now?" "Now my father gets arrested, the company gets dismantled, and I spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for the people we killed." Her eyes were wet. "Starting with your wife. You can't bring her back." "I know, but I can make sure nobody else dies the way she did." Ariana's voice was fierce. "Every system gets redesigned from scratch. Every safety protocol gets rewritten. And every single person who covered this up, including my father, goes to prison. That's a hell of a way to honor your family legacy. My family legacy is blood and lies. It's time to build something better." The helicopter flew through clearing skies, carrying them back toward the world of consequences and headlines and the hard work of justice. Caleb closed his eyes and let himself breathe. For the first time in 10 years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. Sarah would be proud. And maybe, just maybe, he could finally start to forgive himself. Caleb woke up 3 days later in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. His body felt like it had been put through a wood chipper and reassembled wrong. Every breath was a negotiation with his broken ribs. His head throbbed where they'd stitched up a gash above his eyebrow, and his left shoulder was wrapped so tight he could barely move it. But he was alive. The first face he saw was Mia's. She was asleep in a chair beside his bed, curled up under a hospital blanket, her hand stretched out to touch his arm, like she'd been holding on to him and finally lost the fight against exhaustion. Caleb's throat tightened. He reached over carefully with his good hand and brushed hair from her face. Her eyes opened immediately. "Dad?" Her voice cracked. Then she was up, careful not to jostle him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You scared me so bad." "I'm sorry, sweetheart. You were unconscious for 3 days. 3 days. Do you know how long that is when you're 10? Pretty long, I'm guessing. Forever. It's forever." She pulled back and her eyes were red and fierce. "Don't ever do that again." "Can't promise that." "Dad." "But I can promise I'll always come back. How's that?" She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, that's good enough." She sat back down, still holding his hand. "Everyone's been calling. The news people, the FAA, even the governor's office.
You're famous now, like really famous. Great, I hate that. Aunt Emma says you're a hero. Aunt Emma's biased. The news says you're a hero too. They're calling you the guy who brought down Vale Aerospace. Mia's expression turned serious. Is that true? Did you really make them shut down the whole company? Caleb thought about how to answer that. About Ariana testifying against her own father. About Marcus Vale being arrested as he tried to board a private jet to Switzerland. About the thousands of employees who'd lost their jobs when the company folded, their livelihoods sacrificed because people at the top had chosen profit over safety. It's complicated, he said finally. That's what adults say when the truth is hard. You're too smart for your own good. I know. She squeezed his hand. But I'm glad you did it. Whatever you did. Because Mom would have wanted you to. She would have wanted people to be safe. Yeah, she would have. The door opened. Emma came in carrying coffee and looking like she hadn't slept much either. When she saw Caleb was awake, relief flooded her face. You idiot, she said, which was about the most affection she ever showed. Flying into a storm after 10 years. What were you thinking? I was thinking someone needed help. Someone always needs help. That doesn't mean you have to be the one providing it. She set down the coffee and crossed her arms. But I guess that's who you are. Sarah knew it. I know it. Even Mia knows it. I'm really not that noble. No, you're that stubborn, which is close enough. Emma glanced at Mia. Sweetheart, why don't you go get some breakfast from the cafeteria? I need to talk to your dad about boring adult stuff. Mia looked between them suspiciously, but nodded. Don't tell him anything important without me. Wouldn't dream of it. When Mia left, Emma sat down in the chair she'd vacated. Her expression turned serious. The lawyers came by yesterday. Vale Aerospace's lawyers. They wanted to serve you with papers, but hospital security threw them out. She pulled an envelope from her bag. They left this. I haven't opened it, but I'm guessing it's not a thank you card. Caleb took the envelope. His name was typed on the front in official-looking font. He tore it open and scanned the contents. It was exactly what he'd expected. A lawsuit, defamation, tortious interference, conspiracy to damage the company's reputation. They were coming after him for everything, his house, his savings, his future earnings. They wanted to bury him so deep he'd never see daylight again. How bad? Emma asked. Bad? He set the papers down. They're saying I orchestrated the whole thing, that I manipulated Ariana Vale, falsified evidence, and destroyed the company out of personal revenge for Sarah's death. That's insane. That's expensive lawyers. Caleb leaned back against the pillows, exhaustion washing over him. They're going to drag this out for years. Even if I win, the legal fees will bankrupt me. Then we fight. I'll sell my house if I have to. No. Caleb's voice was firm. You're not sacrificing your life for this. I knew what I was getting into. Did you? Did you really think it through? Because from where I'm sitting, you threw yourself into a fire and now you're surprised you got burned. I'd do it again. Emma stared at him. Then she shook her head, somewhere between anger and admiration. You really are Sarah's husband. She was just as stupidly brave. I miss her. I know, we all do. Emma stood up. But you're still here, and Mia still needs you. So whatever happens with these lawsuits, whatever hell Marcus Vale tries to rain down on you, you remember that. You've got people who need you alive and whole. I'll remember. She squeezed his shoulder and left. Caleb sat alone with the lawsuit papers, trying to figure out how he was going to survive the next year, let alone the next decade. Then his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It's Ariana. I heard you're awake. Can I visit? He stared at the message for a long moment. Part of him wanted to say no. Wanted to keep her at arm's length, maintain the distance between the man who'd lost everything and the woman whose family had taken it. But another part, the part that had flown into a storm with her, that had watched her risk everything to save Morrison, that part knew she was fighting the same battle he was. He typed back, Room 412. She arrived 20 minutes later. Ariana looked different than the last time he'd seen her. Thinner. More tired. Like the weight of what she'd done was catching up with her. Her broken arm was still in a cast, now covered with signatures from what looked like FAA investigators and former Vale employees. The message was clear.
Some people stood with her, even if the rest of the world wanted to crucify her. You look terrible, she said. You should see the other guy. I did. Morrison's doing well. They saved his leg. He's already walking with a crutch. She sat down carefully. He wanted me to thank you again, said you gave him his life back. We both did. No, you did. I just followed your lead. She looked down at her hands. I've been doing a lot of that lately, following the lead of people who actually know what honor looks like. Honor's overrated. Mostly it just gets you sued. You got the papers too? This morning. I'm sorry, my father's using everything he has left to destroy anyone who stood against him. You, me, the whistleblowers inside the company. He can't accept that it's over. Caleb gestured at the lawsuit. Doesn't look very over to me. It will be. The FAA finished their investigation. They found proof of systematic negligence going back 15 years. Falsified safety reports, bribed inspectors, internal memos showing my father knew about the defects, and approved production anyway. Her voice was hollow. He's going to prison. Real prison, not some country club. And every lawsuit he's filed is going to fall apart when the evidence goes public. When does that happen? Tomorrow. They're announcing findings at a press conference. She met his eyes. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Your wife's crash, the investigation that cleared you of pilot error, it's all being reopened. The official conclusion is going to be mechanical failure caused by corporate negligence. Your record will be cleared, your reputation restored. Caleb felt something shift in his chest. 10 years. 10 years of carrying the weight of wondering if he could have done something different, been faster, been better. 10 years of guilt and shame and the question that never stopped asking itself. Why him? Sarah's going to be exonerated too, Ariana continued. The report will state clearly that she died doing her job perfectly in a helicopter that was fundamentally unsafe. Her name will be cleared. Her family will be notified. She paused. It doesn't bring her back. I know that. But at least the truth will be on record. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is the bare minimum of what I owe you. What I owe all of you. Ariana's eyes were wet. 73 people. That's how many crashes have been linked to Vale helicopters over the past 15 years. 73 people who died because my father prioritized quarterly earnings over human lives. And I didn't see it. I was so busy trying to prove I could run the company, so focused on innovation and market share, that I missed what was right in front of me. You weren't responsible for your father's choices. No, but I'm responsible for not asking harder questions, for trusting the reports he showed me instead of digging deeper. She wiped her eyes. I'm shutting it all down. Not just the helicopter division, the entire company. Every asset gets liquidated. Every penny goes into a victim's fund for the families who lost people in our crashes. Caleb stared at her. That's billions of dollars. Yes. Your entire inheritance. What inheritance? It's blood money. Every dollar was earned on the backs of people who trusted us to keep them safe. Her voice hardened. I don't want it. I don't deserve it. The families do. What about you? What happens to you after all this? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Get a job somewhere. Start over. Try to be someone who doesn't carry a body count. She looked at him. What about you? Apparently I'm going to be fighting lawsuits for the next several years. Not if I can help it. I'm testifying on your behalf. So are the FAA investigators. So is Morrison and every other pilot who's willing to stand up and say, Vale Aerospace destroyed lives. She leaned forward. You're not alone in this, Caleb. You have people who will fight for you. Why? Because you're one of the good ones. Because you pulled me out of a fire when you could have walked away. Because you risked everything to save Morrison, even though it meant flying a helicopter you knew might fail. Her voice softened. Because Sarah was right about you. You're brave in all the ways that matter. You never met Sarah. I read about her. After the crash, after I learned who you were, I read everything I could find. The articles about her work as a flight nurse, the testimonials from people she'd saved, the memorial service where 100 people showed up to say how much she mattered. Ariana smiled sadly. She sounded amazing. She was. And she loved you. That came through in every story, every photo. The way she looked at you. Ariana's expression turned wistful. I've never had that. Never had someone look at me like I was their whole world. My father looked at me like an asset. My ex-husband looked at me like a trophy. But nobody ever looked at me the way Sarah looked at you in those photos. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. The door opened. Mia came back carrying a tray with what looked like hospital breakfast for two. She stopped when she saw Ariana. Oh, hi. You're the helicopter lady. Ariana blinked. The helicopter lady? From the news. You're the one who shut down your own company because they were making dangerous helicopters. Yes, that's me. Mia set down the tray and studied Ariana with the unnerving directness only 10-year-olds could manage. Are you here to say sorry to my dad? Mia, Caleb said. It's a fair question. Ariana looked at Mia. Yes, I came to apologize. Your dad's wife, your mom, she died because my family's company made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. And I'm sorry. I can't fix it, but I'm sorry. Mia considered this. Okay. Okay? Yeah. You seem like you mean it. Mia glanced at Caleb. She can stay for breakfast if she wants. I got extra eggs. Ariana laughed, surprised. Thank you. That's very kind. They ate together, the three of them, in Caleb's hospital room. It should have been awkward, the widower, his daughter, and the woman whose family had destroyed their lives. But somehow it wasn't. Somehow it felt almost normal. Mia asked Ariana about flying, about running a company, about what it was like being on the news. Ariana answered honestly, not talking down to her, treating her like someone whose opinion mattered. Can I ask you something? Mia said eventually. Of course. Are you going to be okay? After all this? Ariana was quiet for a moment. I don't know, but I'm going to try. Good, because you seem nice, and my dad needs more nice people around. Mia looked at Caleb. He's always alone. Even when Aunt Emma and I are there, he's alone. I think he's been alone since Mom died. Mia, Caleb said again, more forcefully this time. It's true. You don't have friends, you don't date, you just work and take care of me and stare at old pictures when you think I'm not looking. She turned back to Ariana. So if you're going to be around, that's good. He could use a friend. Ariana's eyes met Caleb's. I'd like that. If it's okay with your dad. Caleb wanted to say no. Wanted to keep the boundaries clear, keep the past in the past, keep his heart locked away where it couldn't be broken again. But Mia was right. He'd been alone for 10 years. Alone in his grief, alone in his guilt, alone in the small, quiet life he'd built to avoid getting hurt. Maybe it was time to risk getting hurt again. It's okay with me, he said. The press conference the next day made national news. Caleb watched it from his hospital bed, Mia on one side, Emma on the other. The FAA director stood at a podium, flanked by investigators and lawyers, and methodically destroyed Vail Aerospace's reputation. The defects, the cover-ups, the bribes, the 73 deaths over 15 years, Marcus Vail's arrest, the criminal charges, the civil penalties, and then near the end, they talked about Sarah. Flight nurse Sarah Rourke died in the line of duty on March 15, 2015, the director said, reading from prepared remarks. The initial investigation concluded pilot error contributed to the crash. Today, we are officially reversing that finding. The crash was caused entirely by mechanical failure resulting from a defective stabilization system. Both Sarah Rourke and pilot Caleb Rourke performed their duties with exceptional skill and professionalism. They are not at fault. Vail Aerospace is at fault, and we deeply regret that it has taken 10 years to acknowledge this truth. Mia grabbed Caleb's hand. Did you hear that, Dad? They said Mom wasn't to blame. They said you weren't to blame. Caleb couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. 10 years of weight, 10 years of guilt, 10 years of carrying a burden that was never his to carry. It all lifted at once, leaving him hollow and light and broken open in ways he didn't know how to process. Dad? He pulled Mia close, burying his face in her hair, and let himself cry for the first time since Sarah's funeral. Emma's hand found his shoulder. She'd be proud of you, so damn proud. The call started immediately after the press conference ended. Jonathan Reeves from the Denver Post, asking for an interview. National networks requesting appearances. Lawyers offering pro bono representation for the lawsuits. And dozens of messages from people Caleb had never met. Former Vail employees, families of crash victims, pilots who'd flown the defective helicopters and survived, all saying thank you. But the call that mattered most came 2 hours later. Mr. Rourke, this is Deputy Director Chen. I wanted to personally thank you for your actions during the Morrison rescue. You saved a life at considerable risk to your own. Just did what needed doing. That's not how the FAA sees it. We'd like to offer you a position. Caleb sat up straighter. A position? Senior Advisor for Aviation Safety. You'd work with our investigation teams, consult on crash analysis, help develop new safety protocols. Chen paused. We need people who understand the real-world consequences of corporate negligence. People who've lived through it and refuse to let it happen again. You're exactly the kind of person we need. I'm not an investigator. I'm just a pilot. You're a pilot who brought down one of the most powerful aerospace companies in the country because you refused to let the truth stay buried. That's exactly what we need. Caleb thought about it. About spending his days making sure what happened to Sarah never happened to anyone else. About turning his grief into something useful, something that mattered. What about my daughter? I can't travel all the time. I can't. Remote work is fine. Flexible schedule. Family comes first, always. Chen's voice softened. We know what you've sacrificed, Mr. Rourke. We're not asking you to sacrifice more. We're asking you to use your experience to help us do better. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. After she hung up, Caleb sat in silence. Mia was watching him. You're going to say yes. How do you know? Because it's the right thing, and you always do the right thing, even when it's hard. She climbed onto the bed carefully, mindful of his injuries. But Dad, if you say yes, I want you to promise something. What? Promise you'll be happy, not just doing the right thing, not just helping people, actually happy, the way you were in the old pictures with Mom. Caleb's throat tightened. Sweetheart, I don't know if I can be that person again. Not that person, a new person, someone who remembers how to smile without it being sad. She looked at him with Sarah's eyes. Mom would want that. She'd want you to live, not just exist. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just finally noticed. He hugged her close. I promise. I'll try to be happy. Good. That's all I'm asking. The doctors released him 3 days later with a bottle of painkillers and strict instructions to avoid flying helicopters for at least 6 months. Caleb took the pills and ignored the instructions. He wasn't planning to fly anytime soon anyway. His body needed time to heal. His mind needed time to process. And his daughter needed her father home, present, not chasing the next rescue or the next crisis. Ariana came to see him off. She was carrying a folder and wearing an expression Caleb had learned meant she'd made a decision she was nervous about. What's that? He asked. A proposal. A business proposal. She handed him the folder. I've been thinking about what comes next. After Vail Aerospace is dismantled, after the Victims Fund is established, after I've done everything I can to make amends. She took a breath. I want to start a new company, one that does aviation safety consulting, independent analysis, crash investigation support, pilot training and emergency procedures, everything Vail Aerospace should have been doing but wasn't. Caleb opened the folder. Inside were business plans, financial projections, and a list of people she wanted to bring on board. Pilots, engineers, safety experts. His name was at the top. You want me to help you build a company? I want you to help me build the company we should have been all along. One that puts safety first, always. She met his eyes. You'd be equal partner, equal say in everything, and your daughter's college fund would be fully funded as part of your compensation package. Ariana, I can't. Before you say no, think about it. Really think about it. Her voice was intense. You've spent 10 years running from aviation, running from the thing you loved because it hurt too much to remember. But you're a pilot, Caleb. You're one of the best, and the industry needs people like you. People who understand that every decision has consequences, that every corner cut is a life at risk. I already got a job offer from the FAA. I know, Chen told me, take it, do both. Consult for us when you're not working for them. She smiled. I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to use every skill you have to make sure what happened to Sarah, what happened to Morrison, what happened to 73 people, never happens again. Caleb looked down at the folder, at the future she was offering him. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. It was exactly the kind of impossible challenge that Sarah would have pushed him toward. I need time to think about it. Take all the time you need. But Caleb? Ariana reached out and squeezed his hand. Whatever you decide, thank you for saving my life, for showing me what real courage looks like, for refusing to let my family's sins stay hidden. You did that yourself. You gave me the push I needed.
She stood up to leave, then paused. Oh, and Caleb, Mia's right. You do need more friends. So maybe call sometime, even if it's not about business, even if it's just to talk. I don't really do that. Then learn. Because isolation is just another form of running away. She left before he could respond. Emma drove him and Mia home, the mountain roads winding through scenery that looked different now. Brighter, somehow. Like someone had turned up the saturation on the whole world. Maybe that's what happened when you stopped carrying guilt that wasn't yours. Maybe everything just looked clearer. Home was the small house they'd moved into after Sarah died. 3 bedrooms, a garage Caleb had converted into a workshop, and a yard that Mia had filled with wildflowers. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Mia ran inside immediately to check on her room, make sure everything was exactly as she'd left it. Emma helped Caleb inside, fussing over him until he threatened to discharge himself from her care too. You're impossible, she said. It's part of my charm. You have no charm. You have stubbornness masquerading as charm. She hugged him carefully. I'm glad you're home. I'm glad you're okay. And I'm glad you finally stopped punishing yourself for something that was never your fault. I'm working on it. Work faster. You're not getting any younger. After she left, Caleb sat on the couch and just breathed. The house smelled like home, like Mia's art projects and Emma's cooking and the lavender candles Sarah used to love. He'd kept burning them after she died, unable to let go of that small connection. Mia came and sat beside him. Dad? Yeah? Are you going to take the FAA job? Probably. And the job with Miss Ariana? Maybe. I don't know yet. I think you should. I think Mom would want you to. She leaned against him. But I also think you should do something else. What's that? Go on a date. Caleb nearly choked. Excuse me? A date? With a girl? Or a guy if that's your thing. I don't judge. She looked up at him seriously. You loved Mom, I know that. And you'll always love Mom. But she's been gone 10 years and you've been alone the whole time. That's not healthy. I'm not alone. I have you. I'm your daughter. That's different. She poked his arm. I want you to find someone who makes you smile the way Mom did. Someone who makes you happy. Sweetheart, it's not that simple. Why not? Because I'm not ready. Will you ever be ready, or are you just going to wait until I'm grown up and gone and you're old and alone? Caleb stared at his daughter, wondering when she'd gotten so perceptive and so brutal in her honesty. I'll think about it, he said finally. That's what you always say when you mean no. This time I mean it. She studied his face, then nodded. Okay, I believe you. She snuggled closer. But Dad, if you do find someone, I approve of Ms. Ariana. She seems nice, and she makes you less grumpy. I'm not grumpy. You're totally grumpy. You've been grumpy for 10 years. Have not. Have too. They argued about it until Mia fell asleep against his shoulder, and Caleb sat in the quiet house thinking about futures he'd never let himself imagine, about jobs that mattered, about friendships that could become something more, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, surviving wasn't the same as living. His phone buzzed, a text from Ariana. Forgot to tell you, Morrison's being released tomorrow. He wants to meet you. Say thank you properly. Would you come? Caleb looked at Mia, sleeping peacefully, at the house that had been his refuge and his prison, at the life he'd built that was safe and small and suffocating. He typed back, I'll be there. And for the first time in 10 years, he felt like he was moving forward instead of just treading water. The truth had finally won. The weight had finally lifted.
and the sky, impossibly, was full of possibilities again. Morrison was waiting outside the hospital with his wife and baby when Caleb arrived. The young pilot was leaning on a crutch, his leg still in a heavy brace, but he was standing, alive, whole in the ways that mattered. When he saw Caleb, his face broke into a grin that was part relief, part disbelief, like he still couldn't quite believe any of them had survived. "Rourke?" Morrison extended his hand. "I was starting to think you were a hallucination I dreamed up in that canyon." Caleb shook it. "Nope, real and still healing, same as you." Morrison's wife stepped forward. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with tired eyes and a baby strapped to her chest. "Mr. Rourke, I'm Claire, and this is Sophie." She touched the baby's head. "I wanted to thank you for bringing him home to us. I just flew the helicopter. Ariana did the hard part. You both did the impossible." Claire's voice cracked. "When they told me David's helicopter went down, when they said no one was flying rescue because of the storm, I thought I'd lost him. I thought Sophie would grow up without her father." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You gave us our life back." Caleb didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to accept gratitude that felt too big for what he'd done. So he just nodded and let Morrison pull him into a careful hug that avoided both their injuries. "I owe you everything," Morrison said quietly. "You don't owe me anything. Just live well. Be a good father. That's all the payment I need." Morrison pulled back, wiping his eyes. "I'm done with Vale. Done with helicopters for a while. Claire and I are moving back to Montana, close to her family. I'm going to teach flying instead. Small planes, student pilots, nothing that can fall out of the sky because some CEO cut corners." "That sounds like a good plan. What about you? What's next for the guy who brought down an empire?" "I don't know yet, figuring it out as I go." Ariana appeared from the parking lot, carrying coffee and looking like she'd actually slept for once. She handed cups to Morrison and Claire, then offered one to Caleb. "You came," she said. "Said I would. You also said you'd think about the business proposal. Any progress on that?" "Some. Still thinking." "That's fair." She turned to Morrison. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a mountain, but alive, so I'll take it." Morrison's expression turned serious. "Ariana, I need to ask you something about the helicopter, about what happened up there." "Ask." "Did you know, before the crash? Did you know the system was defective?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Ariana took a breath. "I suspected. I'd been reviewing safety reports, seeing patterns I didn't like. That's why I was doing the inspection flight myself. I wanted to test the system under real conditions, see if my concerns were founded." She met Morrison's eyes. "I didn't know for certain, but I should have grounded the fleet anyway. Should have listened to my instincts instead of the engineers my father paid to tell me everything was fine. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let you fly a machine I had doubts about." Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "I appreciate the honesty, and for what it's worth, I believe you. You're not your father." "No, but I enabled him by not asking harder questions, by trusting the wrong people." Ariana's voice was steady but strained. "I'm spending the rest of my life making sure that never happens again. To you, to anyone." Claire shifted the baby to her other shoulder. "What happens to Vale Aerospace now? I've been following the news, but it's hard to understand all the legal stuff." "The company's being dissolved," Ariana said. "All assets liquidated. The proceeds go into a victims' compensation fund for the families of everyone who died in Vale crashes over the past 15 years. My father's going to prison for corporate manslaughter and fraud. And every executive who knew about the defects and stayed silent is being prosecuted. And you? I'm testifying against all of them, including my father." Ariana's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "After that, I'm starting over. New company, new mission, new way of doing things." Morrison glanced at Caleb. "He tell you about the proposal?" "He's thinking about it." "He should say yes. We all should work together, build something that actually gives a damn about keeping pilots alive." Morrison shifted his weight, wincing. "I may be done flying for Vale, but I'm not done flying. And when I get back in the air, I want to know the people building the machines actually care if I come home." "That's the goal," Ariana said. "Safety first. Always. No exceptions, no compromises." They talked for another hour, standing in the spring sunshine that felt almost too bright after the darkness of the past few weeks. Sophie woke up and cried, and Claire walked her around the parking lot while Morrison told stories about his Air Force days. Ariana laughed at the right moments, asked the right questions, and Caleb watched her slowly relax into something that looked almost like hope. When it was time to leave, Morrison pulled Caleb aside. "Can I give you some advice? Do I have a choice?" "Not really." Morrison grinned. "Stop punishing yourself. For Sarah, for the decade you lost, for all of it. You're one of the good ones, Rourke. You deserve to be happy. So find something, or someone, that makes you happy and hold on to it." "You sound like my daughter." "Then your daughter's smart." Morrison clapped him on the shoulder. "Take the job. Work with Ariana. Build something that matters. And maybe, while you're at it, let yourself live again." Caleb drove home with Morrison's words echoing in his head. The house was quiet when he got back. Mia was at school. Emma was at work. It was just him and the ghosts he'd been living with for 10 years. He walked through the rooms, looking at the photos of Sarah that still lined the walls. Her smile, her laugh, the way she'd looked at him like he was everything. He missed her. Would always miss her. But maybe missing her didn't mean he had to stop living. His phone rang. It was Chen from the FAA. "Mr. Rourke, have you had a chance to consider our offer?" "I have." "And?" "I'm in. When do I start?" "As soon as you're medically cleared. We'll send over the paperwork." Chen sounded pleased. "Welcome to the team. We're glad to have you." After he hung up, Caleb sat down and pulled out the folder Ariana had given him. The business proposal for the new aviation safety company. He read through it carefully this time, paying attention to the details, the mission statement, the commitment to transparency and accountability. It was everything Vail Aerospace should have been. He picked up his phone and texted Ariana. "I'm in for your company too. Let's build something that keeps people alive." Her response came immediately. "Thank you. You won't regret this." Then another message. "Dinner tonight? To celebrate? I know a place, nothing fancy, just good food and better company." Caleb stared at the message. It wasn't a date. She wasn't asking for a date. It was just dinner. Business partners celebrating a new venture. Completely professional, completely innocent. Except it didn't feel innocent. It felt like possibility. He thought about Mia's words, about Morrison's advice, about Sarah and the way she'd always pushed him to be braver than he thought he could be. He typed back, "What time?" Spring turned into summer with the kind of swiftness that only happened when your life was actually moving forward instead of standing still. Caleb started with the FAA in June, consulting on crash investigations and safety protocols. The work was hard, often heartbreaking, but it mattered. Every report he wrote, every recommendation he made, was a chance to prevent the next tragedy. To make sure some other pilot didn't lose the person they loved because someone decided profit mattered more than safety. The lawsuits from Vail's remaining stakeholders were dismissed when the criminal evidence went public. Marcus Vail was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. 3 executives got 10 years each. A dozen more took plea deals in exchange for testimony. The company that had once been worth billions was dismantled piece by piece, its assets sold off to fund compensation for the victims' families. Sarah's family received a settlement. So did the families of the 72 others who died in Vail crashes. It didn't bring anyone back. But it was acknowledgement. It was justice, imperfect and late, but real. Through it all, Ariana worked tirelessly to build something better. The new company was called Horizon Safety Group. The name was Caleb's suggestion. A horizon was possibility. A horizon was the future. And safety was the promise they made to every pilot, every passenger, every family that trusted them. They hired the best engineers, the ones who'd been silenced at Vail for raising concerns. They brought in independent consultants, former FAA investigators, pilots who'd survived crashes and understood viscerally what failure meant. And they built systems with redundancy and transparency where every decision was documented, every concern was investigated, and cutting corners wasn't just discouraged, it was impossible. Caleb and Ariana worked together constantly, planning meetings, safety reviews, site visits to manufacturers. They argued about protocols and procedures, pushed each other to think harder and demand better, and slowly, carefully, became friends. It wasn't dramatic. There was no moment when everything changed. Just a gradual shifting of boundaries, a slow erosion of the walls Caleb had built around himself. Dinner after work became regular. Coffee meetings turned into conversations that had nothing to do with business. And somewhere along the way, Caleb realized he was looking forward to seeing her. Not because they had work to discuss, just because she was easy to be around. Because she understood loss and guilt and the complicated work of rebuilding yourself after everything falls apart. Mia noticed, of course. "You smile more when Ms. Ariana call," she said one evening while they were making dinner. "Do not. Do too, and you dress nicer on days you're meeting with her. That's just professional." "Uh-huh, professional." Mia grinned. "It's okay, Dad. I told you I approved." "There's nothing to approve. We're business partners. Business partners who have dinner together 3 times a week. We're discussing safety protocols." "For 6 hours?" Caleb threw a dish towel at her. "You're impossible." "I'm observant. There's a difference." She caught the towel and tossed it back. "But seriously, Dad, if you like her, it's okay. You're allowed to like someone. Mom would want you to." "How do you know what Mom would want?" "Because she loved you, and people who love someone want them to be happy, even after they're gone." Mia's voice was matter-of-fact. "Mom's been gone 10 years. That's most of my life. I barely remember her except through stories and pictures. But you remember everything, and you've been so sad for so long." She looked at him with eyes too old for 10. "You're less sad now, and I think Ms. Ariana is part of that." Caleb's throat tightened. "When did you get so wise?" "Been wise forever." "You just finally started listening." The conversation he'd been avoiding happened in September. They were at a construction site, overseeing the build-out of Horizon's first dedicated testing facility. The building was going up fast, all steel and glass and clean lines, a hangar for prototypes, labs for component testing, offices for the growing team. It was real. It was happening. The dream they'd built in hospital rooms and late-night phone calls was becoming solid and tangible. Ariana stood at the edge of the site, looking at the steel framework against the sunset. Her broken arm had healed months ago, but she still rubbed it absently sometimes, like she was checking to make sure it was real. "I want to name it after her," she said quietly. Caleb came to stand beside her. "Name what?" "The first helicopter we certify. The one that passes every test, meets every standard, proves that we can do this right." She turned to look at him. "I want to call it the Sarah 1, if that's okay with you." Caleb felt something break open in his chest. "Ariana, she deserves to be remembered, not as a victim, but as the reason we're doing this. The reason we're refusing to compromise, refusing to cut corners, refusing to let profit matter more than lives." Ariana's eyes were bright. "Every pilot who flies that helicopter, every person who trusts us to keep them safe, they'll know her name. They'll know she mattered. It's too much. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's what I can give." She reached out and took his hand. "Say yes, please." Caleb looked at their joined hands, at the woman who'd testified against her own father, who'd destroyed her family legacy because it was the right thing to do, who'd spent 6 months building something good from the ruins of something terrible. "Mia would love it," he said finally. "She barely remembers Sarah, but she'd love knowing her mom's name is on something that saves lives." "Then it's decided." Ariana squeezed his hand. "The Sarah 1, first of many." They stood there as the sun set, watching workers secure steel beams and lay foundations, building something that would last, something that would matter. "Can I ask you something?" Ariana said. "Sure. What are we doing?" "Building a safety testing facility?" "That's not what I mean." She turned to face him fully. "What are we doing, you and me? This thing between us that we both keep pretending is just business and friendship, when we both know it's more." Caleb's heart started hammering. "Ariana, I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. But I need to know if I'm imagining this. If it's just me hoping for something that isn't there, or if you feel it too." He could lie. Could say it was just friendship, just professional respect, just two people bound together by tragedy and obligation. Could keep the walls up, keep himself safe, keep the possibility of loss at bay. Or he could be brave. I feel it too, he said quietly. I've felt it since the hospital. Maybe before. I don't know. He took a breath. But I'm scared. I'm scared of betraying Sarah's memory. I'm scared of letting someone in and losing them again. I'm scared that if I'm happy, it means I've forgotten her. You'll never forget her, Ariana said. She's part of you, part of Mia, part of everything good about who you are. She stepped closer. But Caleb, you're allowed to have a future too. You're allowed to be happy. Sarah would want that for you. That's what everyone keeps saying. Because it's true. Ariana's voice was gentle. I'm not trying to replace her. I could never replace her. I'm just asking if maybe there's room for something new, something different, something that honors the past but doesn't live there. Caleb looked at her, really looked, at the woman who'd risked everything for the truth, who'd sat with him through depositions and testimony and the slow, painful work of justice, who made him laugh when he forgot how, who understood guilt and loss and the complicated math of moving forward. I don't know how to do this, he said. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. She smiled. We're good at that. He kissed her there on the construction site, with workers whistling and the sun painting everything gold. It wasn't perfect. His ribs still hurt when he moved wrong. Her arm still ached when it rained. They were both broken in ways that would never fully heal, but they were alive. And alive meant possibility. When he pulled back, Ariana was crying. Okay? He asked. Better than okay. She laughed through the tears. I've wanted to do that for months. Why didn't you? Because you needed time. Because I didn't want to push. Because I was terrified you'd say no. She touched his face. I'm still terrified, honestly. This is all so new and fragile, and what if I mess it up? What if I'm not enough? What if... He kissed her again, softer this time. Stop overthinking, he said. Just be here. We'll figure out the rest. They held each other as the sun finished setting and the construction lights came on, illuminating the skeleton of what they were building. A facility, a company. A future that looked nothing like either of them had planned, but might be exactly what they needed. The opening ceremony happened in March, exactly 10 years after Sarah's death. The timing was intentional, a memorial and a beginning all at once. They'd invited everyone who mattered, the FAA officials who'd supported the investigation, the engineers who'd testified against Vail, the families of crash victims, Morrison and his wife and baby Sophie, now toddling around and getting into everything, and Mia, wearing a dress Sarah had bought her years ago that she'd finally grown into. The hangar was massive, big enough for 3 helicopters with room for testing equipment and observation platforms. The walls were lined with photos, the 73 people who'd died in Vail crashes, their names, their faces, the lives they'd lived. Sarah's photo was in the center, smiling that smile that used to light up Caleb's whole world. Ariana stood at a podium, looking out at the assembled crowd. She was wearing a simple black suit, her hair pulled back, her face composed, but her hands shaking slightly. 10 years ago, she began, my father's company made a choice. They chose profit over safety. They chose quarterly earnings over human lives. They chose to cover up defects rather than fix them. And 73 people died because of those choices. The crowd was silent. Among those 73 was Sarah Rourke, a flight nurse, a wife, a mother, a hero who spent her career saving lives and died because the people she trusted to keep her safe prioritized money over her safety. Ariana's voice strengthened. I can't bring her back. I can't undo the damage my family's company caused. But I can make sure it never happens again. She gestured to the hangar behind her. This facility represents a new way of doing things. Every helicopter tested here will meet the highest safety standards. Every component will be verified independently. Every concern will be investigated thoroughly. And every decision will be made with one question in mind. Would I trust this machine with the life of someone I love? Ariana looked at Caleb, then at Mia. Sarah Rourke died 10 years ago. But her legacy lives on in this building, in this work, in the commitment we're making today. Every pilot who flies a helicopter certified by Horizon Safety Group will owe their safety to her memory, to the standards she deserves, to the world she would have wanted us to build. She paused, composing herself. We're naming our first certified helicopter the Sarah 1. It's already in testing, and when it passes, and it will pass, it'll be the safest helicopter ever built, not just better than Vale, better than anything that's ever flown. Applause started, scattered at first, then building. Ariana raised her hand for quiet. But before we celebrate, I want to acknowledge the man who made this possible. Caleb Rourke lost his wife to my family's negligence. He had every reason to walk away, to take the settlement money, to let the past stay buried. Instead, he fought. He risked everything, his safety, his reputation, his life, to make sure the truth came out. And then he helped me build something better from the ruins. She looked directly at him. Caleb, would you join me? He wasn't expecting that, wasn't prepared, but Mia pushed him forward, and suddenly he was standing next to Ariana in front of everyone who'd been touched by Vale's failures. I don't have a speech, he said. Then just speak from the heart. Caleb looked out at the crowd, at the faces of people who'd lost loved ones, at Morrison, who owed his life to a storm rescue, at the engineers who'd found the courage to testify, at Mia, watching him with Sarah's eyes. 10 years ago, I lost my wife, he said quietly, and I spent a decade wondering why I survived when she didn't, wondering what I could have done differently, wondering if I deserved to be the one who walked away. His voice caught. The FAA investigation told me it wasn't my fault. Told me the system was defective, the crash was inevitable, I did everything right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it in your bones are different things. I didn't feel innocent, I felt guilty. And that guilt almost destroyed me. He looked at Ariana. Then I pulled a woman out of a burning helicopter, and that woman turned out to be the daughter of the man who'd covered up the defects. And instead of protecting her family, instead of choosing the easy path, she chose the truth. She blew up her entire life because it was the right thing to do. Ariana's eyes were wet. She showed me that guilt and responsibility aren't the same thing, that surviving doesn't mean you don't deserve to live, that sometimes the only way to honor the past is to build a better future. Caleb's voice strengthened. So that's what we're doing here, building a future where no other pilot has to wonder if they could have saved their passenger, where no other child grows up without a parent because someone cut corners, where safety isn't negotiable. He turned to look at Sarah's photo on the wall. Sarah, if you're listening, I hope we're making you proud. I hope this place, these standards, this commitment to doing things right, I hope it means something. I hope it means your death wasn't meaningless. He wiped his eyes. And to everyone else who lost someone to Vale's failures, we see you. We remember them. And we promise to do better. Not just here, not just us, but everywhere. We're changing the industry. We're setting new standards, and we're making sure that your loved one's names stand for something real and lasting. The applause this time was thunderous. After the ceremony, people came up to shake his hand, to tell him thank you, to share their stories. Caleb listened to all of them. It was exhausting and emotional and necessary. These were the people Sarah had died with, the families that had been left behind. They deserved to be heard. When the crowd finally thinned, Mia appeared at his elbow. Good speech, Dad. Thanks, sweetheart. I think Mom heard it, wherever she is. Yeah, me too. They walked through the hangar together, past the photos, past the testing equipment, past the prototype of the Sarah 1 sitting in the center bay. It was beautiful, sleek and modern with safety features built into every system. Redundant controls, multiple backup protocols, fail-safes that would have saved Sarah's life. Can I ask you something? Mia said. Always. Are you happy now? For real? Caleb thought about it. About the work he was doing with the FAA. About Horizon Safety Group and the standards they were setting. About Ariana and the careful, patient way they were building something together. About this moment, standing in a hangar named for his wife with his daughter by his side. Yeah, he said. I think I am. Good. Mia hugged him. That's all I wanted. Ariana found them there, standing by the Sarah 1. You two okay? We're good, Caleb said. She looked at the helicopter.
First flight test is next week.
Chen from the FAA is coming personally to observe. If we pass, this becomes the new gold standard for safety certification. We'll pass. You sound confident. I am confident. We built it right. No shortcuts, no compromises. It's everything it should be. Ariana smiled. Sarah would have loved it. She would have loved all of this, the facility, the mission, the idea that her death led to something good. Caleb took Ariana's hand. Thank you for making this real. We made it real, together. Mia cleared her throat dramatically. Are you two going to get married or what? Mia! Caleb's face went red. What? I'm just asking. You've been dating for 6 months. You clearly love each other. And I already call her Ariana anyway, so it wouldn't be weird. Ariana laughed, surprised. That's very direct. I believe in efficiency. Mia looked between them. So, what's the holdup? Caleb and Ariana exchanged glances. We're taking it slow, Caleb said. You're both overthinking it, Mia countered. Mom's been gone 10 years. She'd want you to be happy, and Ariana makes you happy. So stop being scared and just do the thing. What thing? The thing where you commit to each other and build a life together and stop pretending you're not already a family. Mia crossed her arms. I'm 10. If I can figure it out, so can you. Ariana was trying not to laugh. She makes a compelling argument. She's a terror. I'm practical, Mia corrected. There's a difference. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the hangar was dark except for the safety lights, Caleb and Ariana sat on the observation platform looking down at the Sarah 1. She's not wrong, you know, Ariana said. Mia's never wrong. It's exhausting. I mean about us, about committing, about being a family. Ariana turned to face him. I know it's fast. I know we're both broken in ways that don't just heal. But Caleb, I love you. I love Mia. I love the life we're building together. And I don't want to waste time being careful when we could be happy. Caleb's heart was pounding. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking if you'd consider it, someday, when you're ready, if you're ever ready. She took a shaky breath. No pressure. I just wanted you to know how I feel. He kissed her, long and deep and full of everything he couldn't put into words. When they broke apart, she was crying again. Is that a yes? She asked. It's a yes. Really? Really, but on one condition. What's that? We do it here, in this hangar, with Sarah's photo watching. So she's part of it too. Ariana nodded, unable to speak. They sat together in the dark, holding hands, watching the helicopter that would carry Sarah's name into the sky. The facility hummed around them with the promise of safety and standards, and a future built on the foundation of lives lost, but not forgotten. The wedding happened 6 months later, in September when the aspens turned gold and the mountain air was crisp with the promise of fall. They kept it small. Just family and the people who mattered. Morrison flew in from Montana with Claire and Sophie. The FAA team came. The engineers from Horizon, Emma, and a handful of friends. And Mia, who'd insisted on being the maid of honor despite being 11. The ceremony was simple. Caleb wore a suit. Ariana wore a dress that was elegant without being ostentatious. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, standing in front of the Sarah 1 with Sarah's photo watching from the wall. I promise to honor your past while building our future, Ariana said, her voice steady. I promise to be a partner to you and a parent to Mia. I promise to never forget what brought us together or the responsibility we carry. And I promise to love you, fiercely and completely, for as long as I live. Caleb's hands shook as he held hers. I promise to let myself be happy, he said. To stop punishing myself for surviving, to live the life Sarah would have wanted me to live, full of purpose and love and the courage to keep fighting for what's right. He looked at Ariana. You showed me how to do that, how to transform grief into something meaningful, how to build something good from the wreckage. And I promise to keep building with you, every day, for the rest of our lives. Mia handed them the rings. They were simple silver bands, custom made. On the inside of each was an inscription. Don't leave, the words Ariana had said in the canyon, the words Caleb had refused to obey, the promise they were making to each other now to stay, to fight, to live. They kissed, and everyone applauded, and for a moment everything was perfect. Afterward, they had dinner in the hangar. Long tables covered in white cloth, food from local restaurants, and speeches that were funny and tearful by turns. Morrison talked about the rescue. Emma talked about watching Caleb come back to life. Mia gave a speech that had everyone crying. "My mom died before I could really know her," she said, "but my dad made sure I knew her anyway, through stories and photos and the way he lived his life trying to honor her memory. And now Ariana's going to be part of that too, part of keeping Mom's memory alive, part of making sure the world is better because of what happened." She looked at Caleb and Ariana. "I'm really glad you found each other. I'm really glad we're a family now. And I think Mom's glad too. Wherever she is, I think she's happy that Dad found someone who loves him as much as she did." There wasn't a dry eye in the hangar. As the sun set, Caleb found himself standing alone by Sarah's photo. Ariana was dancing with Mia. Morrison was telling stories that had people laughing. The hangar was full of life and joy and the promise of better days. "I hope this is okay," he said quietly to the photo. "I hope you understand. I'll never stop loving you. But I have to keep living. For Mia. For me. For everyone we're trying to protect." The photo didn't answer. But somehow, standing there in the facility they'd built in her name, with the helicopter that carried her legacy ready for its first commercial flight, Caleb felt at peace. He'd done what he promised. He'd fought for the truth. He'd made sure her death meant something. And now, he was learning to live again. Ariana came to stand beside him. "You okay?" "Yeah, just saying goodbye." "You don't have to say goodbye." "I know, but I need to. She's always going to be part of me, part of us. But she's not the future. We are." He took Ariana's hand, and I'm ready for that. For the first time in 10 years, I'm really ready. They walked back to the party together, to the family they'd built from tragedy and fire and the refusal to let good people die for bad reasons. The Sarah 1 took its first commercial flight 3 months later. It was a medical transport carrying a critical patient from a rural hospital to a trauma center. The same kind of flight Sarah had died on. The same conditions, bad weather, high altitude, the ever-present risk that something might fail. But nothing failed. The helicopter performed flawlessly. Every system worked exactly as designed. The patient reached the hospital safely, and the pilot, a woman named Jennifer, who'd lost her brother in a Vail crash, sent a message afterward. "Thank you for making this machine right, for caring enough to do it properly. I felt safe up there. Really safe. And that's a gift you gave me and every pilot who'll ever fly this helicopter." The message went viral. Within a year, Horizon Safety Group was certifying helicopters for 3 major manufacturers. Within 2 years, they'd expanded into fixed-wing aircraft. And within 5 years, they'd changed the entire industry's approach to safety, forcing companies to prioritize lives over profits or lose their certification. Marcus Vail died in prison, unrepentant to the end, but his legacy was buried under the weight of the good work his daughter had built from his ruins. Caleb continued consulting for the FAA while helping run Horizon. He testified before Congress about aviation safety. He trained the next generation of rescue pilots. And he lived, really lived, for the first time since Sarah's death. Ariana ran Horizon with integrity and fierce determination, building a reputation as someone who couldn't be bought or intimidated. She was tough and brilliant and occasionally terrifying, and she transformed the company into something her father could never have imagined, a business built on doing the right thing. And Mia grew up surrounded by people who'd turned tragedy into purpose, who'd refused to let grief win, who'd shown her that sometimes the only way to honor the past is to build an impossibly better future. On the 10th anniversary of the hangar's opening, they held a memorial service. All 73 names were read aloud. All 73 photos stayed on the wall, and in the center bay, the Sarah 1 sat gleaming, ready for its 1,000th safe flight. Caleb stood with his arm around Ariana, Mia on his other side, taller now, almost as tall as Sarah had been, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn determination. "You did good, Dad," Mia said. "We did good," he corrected. "All of us." "Yeah, we did." They stood together, 3 people bound by loss and love, and the hard work of making sure no one else had to carry the same burden. The mountain wind whispered through the open hangar doors. The helicopter's rotors gleamed in the afternoon sun.
And somewhere, maybe, Sarah was watching and smiling, proud of the man she'd married, the daughter they'd made together, and the family he'd found the courage to build after she was gone. Caleb had stayed in the fire. He'd stayed in the storm. And he'd stayed in life when every instinct told him to retreat into grief and guilt and the safety of standing still. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.